All right. So today's webinar is on safety. This is general safety. There's not a ton of us in here today. It looks like about 6-7 people. Feel free, holler out any questions. We can talk about it. This is going to be general safety conversation, kind of day in the life of a SSHO out on a federal site. Some of the things, just some pointers that I've encountered over my career and some of the forms we use and how we interact with RMS. So today, for those who just joined, we're going to do safety training. My name is Ross Parrish. I work with at ACE Consulting. I head up our pre-con department. And before I did that, I was out in the field doing quality control and safety, as well as superintendent work. But so I did about 3 years as an SSHO and I don't know, about 3 years as QC and a couple combined. So I was out there doing it. So we're just going to go through some of those experiences. If you have particular questions, feel free to ask. Love to cover it. Love to get you all the knowledge you need. And if I don't know it, I'll find it. So for many of you all probably been here before, this slide I'm showing you is how to get your email in here. Our folks receive the list of people that join. It gives us a timestamp of when you're in and out and an email to send your CEU credit to. So if you want that credit while you're sitting here, please make sure you go up to the little person, edit your name and email, and make sure you get it in there. And then we can see it after the fact and get you the CEUs. All right. So safety. Safety is one of those things we contractors like to scoff at or think of secondary. And safety's, I don't want to say always the back burner, but a lot of times get pushed back as we're trying to make schedule, trying to get things done. And we obviously always want to work safely. Sometimes we think the rules and regs are overbearing, but they are there. They are to keep us safe. And I'll agree, sometimes they are overbearing. One of the things is a lot of the safety rules we do have generally are because someone unfortunately died doing something. I am pouring coffee. I am not in the bathroom, just FYI. That is coffee out of a thermos. Didn't know if you could hear it or not. So as an SSHO, federal projects require us to staff a site safety health officer or a dual hat, double hat, maybe super/safety or QC/safety or some combination of the sort. Why do they do that? Why do they specify that? As the CM is what the Corps and NASAC act as on behalf of their clients, it's to mitigate risk, right? Same things PMs do, senior PMs, mitigate risk and lessen exposure. So they require those folks on site every day. If you do core projects, your QC or your PM, or if you're on a live project and you have a staff interacting with RMS, generally the safety doesn't have a lot to do with this RMS system. A lot of people don't do that, but as a safety officer, it's important that your report gets in there. So how does that happen? QC reports in RMS under the QC section. When the QC is doing the report, there is a safety section. So this one has some generic narratives, equipment hours, this, that, and the other. So let me pull up a blank one and we can see it and I complete it. So there's other narratives we can add. And so we'll have safeties, right? So if you did a safety meeting, safety topic, safety inspection, which as a SSHO on site, you should be doing inspections every day. Even if it's not an official inspection, you should be doing them. Walking the job, checking things out, making sure people are working safely. So those get added in here to your daily report for the QC. What I used to do is I just kept a notepad in my pocket, kept the email open every time I got back to the desk, typed what I had on the notepad. At the end of the day, just hit send to the QC, and that gentleman would copy and paste and put it right in there. So you want to make sure you're getting that information in there. On another big part of a safety officer's job on site is not just to make sure your crews are working safely, but there's also visitors on site, onboarding, or orientation. Those all fall into activity hazard analysis. So those are all part of it. And if you look through the EM35, which I'm sure you are all familiar with, let me minimize this thing real quick. You can see a lot of different things. So I just did a quick word search for different toolbox talks, safety meetings. The old EM35 used to say that, sorry, let me close that door. There's a lot of voices behind me. Used to say you had to do it, at least once a month or once a week, depending on what you're doing. So there's not a lot of those call outs anymore. So most people do a toolbox talk daily, which is great. Unfortunately, they can get repetitive, especially if you're doing the same feature of work over and over again. When I was a safety, what I like to do is hold one safety meeting a week, a large one, with the majority of the crews, and have the crews do their own. If you're doing a lot of different things, you don't necessarily have to have somebody that's not going to be affected in there. So that's how I like to do it. I know a lot of folks, they do it for signing purposes to make sure people are on site. They want them there for the safety meeting. That's a great tool too. So if you are doing a safety meeting, make sure you provide a sign-in sheet. This is a toolbox talk that I had from, I think this was from like 2014. But it's just a general toolbox talk of right tool, right job. Don't use the crescent wrench to hammer the hammer or hammer the nail. Apologize. So it's just some sayings. A lot of these are out there online for free. They might not fit your thing specifically, so maybe you need to add or remove. That's fine. ACE is in the process of creating video toolbox talks, so we'll have a library of those hopefully soon that will be for use for folks that you can use on site, and our field personnel will be using those on site. Key things here for the toolbox talk is you definitely want to date it. Definitely want to date it. Job site, if you have multiple job sites, that's fine. You want to summarize what you're talking about. Generally, this is just a few words, but in this one, they did quite a bit. And then the guide for discussion, general points that you want to do. Any notes people brought up is always great. Make sure you have them sign in so it counts. If you're doing a safety topic on something specific and you have the competent person on site, it's always great to get them to weigh in too. Confined space, fall pro, that's always an excellent thing, especially for a big weekly meeting. So as you're walking site and taking notes, that's one thing. Safety meetings are another. The EM35 also asks us to, and caller 37 issues calling in and leaving. One sec. They also ask you to make sure that visitors are accounted for. So in this section, they're talking about visitors and other folks going on site, and I'm trying to think what the actual title of this section is. It's visitors and authorized entrance. There you go. No one should be able to access your site without your knowledge or permission. And why is that important? And that includes government personnel as well. Nobody has free reign to your site. You want them to check in. You want them to be briefed. Same with new crews, or if crews are subbed out, or if they've been gone a while. Your safety orientation, led by your SSHO, should be presenting all the activity hazard analysis that they will be affected by. So for their particular feature of work or any other hazards that might be in their immediate work area, if guys are, if we're roughing in and we got MEP all working together, they need to be aware of the other hazards around them. So those are big things. Think about if you're demoing and starting to reframe, maybe you got a hole cut in the floor for whatever reason. Even if you have a proper cover installed and labeled correctly, still a good thing to give everybody a heads up.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, shoot.
On that, okay, so what if we have somebody's spouse dropping them off? Is it better to keep them outside the site, period, and them get out of the car and just come on the site themselves? Or do they need to have written permission to have their spouse drop them off in the site? Or how would you prefer that go? Because I have had one incident.
Well, I guess it really depends on your site. If you have a drop-off spot, if you do, you're supposed to have some signage there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a rule about how far it has to be away, but I don't know, or how close it needs to be. I don't know that off the top of my head, though. But it's really what risk, say you're on a site that's paved and they can pull right up, drop them off, and head out with minimal risk. I think that's acceptable. But, if they say your trailer's at the end of your job site and they got to drive through the whole thing, I don't know, that might be more risk than you're willing to do. I mean, that's more of your call.
Okay.
But unauthorized people, I always try to keep out of my sites.
Okay, perfect.
One, I have a little, maybe some control issues, but also when you're safety, you're legally responsible for these folks. And if people aren't getting the proper briefings and knowledge and they get hurt, that's on you. So
yes,
the beauty here is if we do the right thing, we're protecting ourselves and our companies. Our first priority is to protect the crews, but we also have to protect ourselves and protect the companies we work for. Those are the big parts of it. The quick little side story, I was doing a job in Washington State, and this particular roadwork project, it's not the one I was on, it's just another project, had a lot of accidents and incidents. And they had so in back-to-back weeks, they had a near miss where they almost killed a family, and then they had a fatality the next week. So we thought for sure it was going to be shut down. OSHA actually did a very quick investigation, which doesn't always happen, but they did a very quick investigation and found the company at no fault. Now, why did they find the company at no fault? Well, the gentleman that died had been trained in fall protection. He had been, certified in fall protection. He had been trained on site. He had a job hazard analysis. He had been provided proper fall protection equipment and instructed on how to use it. It was inspected and up to date. And the gentleman decided not to tie on, and he fell to his death and left two young kids without a father. So as companies, there's only so much we can do. But if we provide all those resources, then we have done our part. Done our part to provide the resources and means for people to be safe. At the end of the day, it is personal responsibility. People have to do the right thing. But you want it all documented. So I don't know, somebody driving on my site that I don't know, that makes me a little nervous. But I've had it happen before. I mean, where a wife would drop somebody off and then come back at the end of the day. I mean, I've had it, but we had a, gate entry they would just pull up in front of the gate and jump out. So.
Okay, perfect. You answered my question perfectly. Thank you.
No problem. Sorry, I tend to get long-winded on things.
It's all good.
So just make sure you are doing proper briefings, and that is visitors. There was a colonel that used to go around different job sites and see when he visited, he would walk on and see if anybody stopped him. And he would mess with contractors that way just to see if he'd be stopped. And believe you me, it's pretty intimidating sometimes. But those are the things you have to do. There's several different reasons why. One, you know who's on your site. Two, you can give them proper safety briefing of hazards they may or may not encounter. And if you do have hazards, say, I mean, heck, maybe you're even doing weld inspections, but you got to put a guy on a lift or go up a ladder or something where there's fall hazards. You know, your safety and your competent person need to be checking that gear, making sure it's right, you know, appropriate, in use, been inspected, doesn't have tears, yada, 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 before they hit your site. I mean, it's, we were doing a crane job and the Corps was coming to inspect, but they actually came with incorrect harnesses and we had to turn them away. It did not go over well, and it was quite tense for some days, but we had no choice. They did not meet the ANSI specifications of a fall protection harness. So those are the things you need to be doing when people are checking in. The other thing,
excuse me, what kind of harnesses were those? Sorry about that. This is Harold out of Houston. I was just wondering what kind of harnesses were those that they showed up with?
Rock climbing harnesses.
Okay.
There's a thing in the ANSI spec, and then it carries through to Ocean EM35. You have to have the tail strap that connects the two legs together, and rock climbing harnesses do not have those, so they do not meet fall protection guidelines for construction work.
Oh, you mean, okay, so you're saying the actual leg straps, well, I've only seen, that's what I'm saying, I've only seen the kind that are, you know, acceptable. That's why I was asking what kind they had. And those are called what again?
Right. They were just for rock climbing.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, rock climbing. Oh, okay, just things they picked up. Okay, I get it.
Right. So it's just one of those things that your competent people need to be, well, they need to be competent, not just pass the test. They need to know what they're doing. But those are sort of things we have to check. We got to check people coming in, check people going out. Well, maybe not going out so much, but sign out date is important. There's a side thing here of why those things are important. If you're doing core work, another thing in RMS you're going to have to do is record exposure hours. All right. Now, before RMS did all this nice and neat and copy paste, we used to keep this all by hand on site, right? Everybody remembers that. You kept your hours, who's on site. And this directly relates to, now stay with me, I'm going to go back to the QC daily reports. This relates to who's on site. All right. Now we have these folks are on site. Here's the equipment on site. Now you see quality control, safety, super. A lot of people don't put these on here. Make sure you put them on here. 2 reasons. The exposure hours in RMS pull right off of this report. So at the end of the month, you can copy hours right off the daily and put it in. You don't have to hand count them and all that good stuff. But the exposure hours is what the Corps, and it's, you know, maybe you're on a Corps project that's, you know, an Air Force base or somewhere else. It's not Corps property, but they are running the construction management. The exposure is how much the Corps or that individual base is exposed to risk during a given time period. So in this time period, it's a month. So you want these things record it correctly every time. Also, it's important to have these on there, and I've seen it happen when stuff gets going south and people have left off the SSHO and the QC manager. The Corps comes back and says, hey, you have no documentation these people are on site. You can't work, or you shouldn't have worked, and they'll ding you. Also, don't get in the habit of just copying and pasting that they were there for 8 hours because they're salary and not Davis Bacon. Make sure it's right, because if you put 8 hours here and all these guys work 10, then your safety and quality have left sight. Almost every spec says they have to be there for the crews to do work. Just make sure it's right. It's something they like to ding you on. If everything's happy and great, are they going to ding you? Probably not. If things get tense, start going down south, they're going to look for things. Don't give them a chance. It also allows you another reason for people to check in. So those are good things. You want to know who's there. You want to have a chance to brief them. You want them to know. And honestly, they need to be going by your OSHA safety bulletin board with all your safe stuff on it. They need to be presented to the hazards. They need to know where first aid is, where help is, where the closest hospital is. And it's all lined out in the N35 and in the APP that you wrote for the job. It all should be in there. One of the things that is in this document is if you are more than 5 miles away or 15 minutes, something like that, you have to have so many first aid kits per employees. So things like that do matter. They're starting to review these plans a lot harder. I don't know if you all have seen that, but we write a lot of plans for folks, and we have seen the reviews step up to a new level here in the last few years. It seems like 10 or so years ago, if you could write sentences, it went through. It doesn't seem like it's that way anymore. So just be aware that this stuff is all in here. In this document, it tells you exactly what they want you to do. So we talked about exposure. We talked about meetings. We talked about HAs, orientation, walking some job sites. I was going to go somewhere else with that, and I just blanked on that explanation. So while I'm thinking about that, does anybody have questions real quick? You want to hit some questions before we go on to the next thing?
And how many first aid kits do we need per mileage that we're away from EMS? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, something like that.
Do we have any plans on adding anything in those for traumatic injury?
Say that one more time. I couldn't quite make it out.
Do you have any plans of adding anything in the first aid kits for traumatic injury?
Something about traumatic injuries. I'm sorry. I couldn't make it all the way out.
Well, adding proper gauze and everything in our first aid kits for traumatic injury. Say if somebody falls on a piece of rebar and it has to be stuffed properly with the right gauze.
Correct. Yeah, it has to be stocked, and there is a list of what it should be stocked with. I actually got dinged on it on site because they came out with the checklist and checked everything on it. So I think I was a few Band-Aids short. Here it is. So first aid kit, there should be one first aid kit for every 25 and fewer employees. And here is this section. If you see it, and non-rural location using has agreed to provide emergency medical support and accessible within 5 minutes of the work location, may be proven instead of a first aid station. Okay, but if you have first aid station, so most of these places, this is why you're seeing 2 people have to be CPR qualified. A lot of times it's our safeties and our supers. So that's where a lot of those spec changes came, was right here. Otherwise, they want you to have that first aid station. So those are some of the pitfalls you'll see. Another thing with competent people, I'm sure you all have heard that plenty. I know you know what the difference between competent and qualified people are, but since we're talking about it, let's just look. And we'll just pull the definition from the little gospel here. So that's the AHA template. Here we go. Oh, no. Well, I'm probably do it faster in Google. Okay, qualified person is one who, by possession of a recognized degree, certificate, of professional standing, and who, by extensive knowledge, training, and experience, has successfully demonstrated his ability to solve and resolve problems relating to the subject matter, the work, or the project. This is generally your engineer. This is somebody that can design something, stamp something, think of fall protection, that they're going to put their stamp on an anchor point. So this is that person. A competent person is our folks in the field, and is an employee who is able to recognize hazards associated with a particular task, the ability to mitigate those hazards. Okay, so there's two things here. You have to have the knowledge to be able to recognize the hazard, and you have to have the authority on site to mitigate those hazards, okay? So safety is everybody's job, right? But in the federal world, you notice that we have to provide letters of authority for people to do their job. So the owner of a particular company, by being the owner, has all the authority and is thus delegated down through the chain of command, and eventually the quality control officer and the safety officer are given letters that outline their authority of what they're allowed to do. And that is, stop work, yada, yada, yada. So a competent person, by naming them competent person on your job site, you're giving them that authority to mitigate those hazards. That is part of their job. Now, in the OSHA definition, it does say that by years of experience, you can be competent. You still want to go get the certification for two reasons. One, the government generally doesn't care. They want to see the certification. In the commercial world, that's all fine and dandy unless you've done it wrong, right? I had somebody tell me, like, well, I'm competent because I've been doing this for 30 years. Well, hey, you did it for 30 years incorrectly, so that it's actually the opposite of competence. So the certification, we might not learn a lot in those, especially those who've been in the business a while. We've gone to so many trainings at this point. They fall on deaf ears a lot, but make sure your competent people are the right people. Now in the federal market, they're making us, and I know you all have seen this, they're making us have competent folks for everything. And it used to be the SSHO could cover a lot of those, but if you're on a big site doing multiple things, one person generally can't be competent for everybody because they need to be there doing the work. Your scaffolding person needs to be there, confined space needs to be there, fall pro needs to be there. And if they're all going on at the same time, one person can't be in three places. Also, the more and more of those competent person certs you hold, the more and more training you have to do. I mean, it can get to a point where you're spending weeks, a year just doing training, trying to keep up all those certifications. So this is something we typically pass off to subs. I'm sure you all do the same thing. If masonry crew's coming out, They need to have a competent scaffold erector, right? If maybe we're going into a vault to do some electrical work, they need to have a competent confined space. Now, on some of these sites, they will insist on the SSHO being the competent person for the main hazard. Like the crane job I mentioned earlier, we were remodeling a bridge crane up in the air inside of a dam. So that particular job, me as the SSHO had to be a fall protection competent person because it was our main everyday hazard because we were always, 40 to 60 feet in the air. So we had other competent people for confined space and welding and scaffolding, but for that particular job, they called it out. So when you're reviewing the specs, just make sure before, when you're bidding, make sure that up front. Don't get caught, like, hey, we're mobbing tomorrow, but we don't have the service. So be up on that. So those are the big things there for competency and being on site, identifying hazards and being able to mitigate those hazards. Anybody have any other questions right this second?
Yeah, I got a question. I always wonder what's a topic to use, the best way to find different topics to bring about on Toolbox Talks or, safety stand downs. And I usually go off the environment they're working in, but sometimes that could be repetitive. So, what's a great way to find different topics, different ways, different things to talk about for Toolbox?
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. That is, especially on a long-term job, gosh, it can be like if you're just doing electrical work, there's only so much electrocution hazard, you can do, right? So honestly, Google Toolbox Talks, take ideas. I agree being in the environment you're in is important. We used to always do it as the season changes, heat exhaustion or cold or slip, trips and falls, hydration. Honestly, to mix it up with guys, I used to throw a weird one in there occasionally, like motorcycle safety. Is it pertaining to your work? No, it's not. But we're still talking safety. We can still rope our work in there oddly, but maybe you are riding some equipment. I mean, some of our jobs, we do four-wheelers or side-by-sides on big jobs. You've seen it. Do a training on it. It can be anything, but use Google. They are supposed to be tailored to what you're doing, but to keep people interested, we do stretch that a little bit. Big ones are hit the big five that, fall pro, confined space, cranes, electrocution, always big. You always hit those. But also you can cover the price of safety is another good one. That, what does it cost? What does safety truly cost? And if we're talking about everybody going home at the end of the day, it costs nothing. Really. Yes. Do you have to put it on your budget? Do you have to account for it? Sure. But a fatality costs a lot more, and with direct and indirect cost. So if you've ever been around a fatality company, they can have long ripples into the future of that bad morale. So I know I didn't really answer your question because it's one of those things we all struggle with. And if you weren't here at the beginning, Ace is working on a library of Toolbox Talks. They're going to be video Toolbox Talks with sign-in sheets. And we have field guys out in the field that do safety and quality and super work for us. And so we're going to provide those to those guys. We haven't exactly figured out how we're going to do it to the public just yet. just because there's a lot of goofy things with videos and yada yada yada. So we are working on that to give other things. Another topic is 4 seconds for safety. Just a random topic that there is. Your safety officer should also be doing some reading on his or her own, figuring out some of the different statistics. The thing when it comes to safety is repetitive tasks actually end up causing more injuries. If you do the same thing every day, all day, you have met the learning curve, right? So you know what you're doing. The problem is, as humans, once we think we know what we're doing, we start slipping, getting sloppy. A lot of accidents happen that way. So what I used to do occasionally, especially if we got stuck in a rut, I do a 4 seconds for safety. Say, hey, listen, if you're doing the same thing and you know you're doing the same thing, you've done this thing, you know, you have tied off to this anchor point and walked over this chasm 40 times a day for the last year. It's repetitive. Before you take that step, take 2 deep breaths, stand up tall, get those shoulders back, take deep breaths, slow down, 4 seconds. Nobody can bust your chops for 4 seconds. Take 4 seconds, remind yourself what you're doing and why you're doing it. Hey, I have to make sure this is secured. I have to make sure that it's here and it latches here, and I have a family at home I want to see, and this job's not anywhere close to important to dying from. So I gave this talk and everybody rolled their eyes on me on my crew. And the gentleman we have on the crew, it was a rough day at the end of the day. And he's like, well, I'm going to do what Ross said. I'm going to take my 4 seconds. I'm going to take some deep breaths, calm down. And then I'm going to walk across this hole in the floor. And he had to tie on to an anchor point. And when he reached down to tie on the anchor point, somebody had unhooked the anchor point and it was no longer an anchor point. So he'd have been tied into nothing if he fell. And he was 45 feet in the air. So getting people to actually listen to those things is hard. It's hard. Any topics you can give to make it hit home. Sometimes you got to throw the fire and brimstone at them. The story I told earlier about the gentleman falling off the bridge and dying, the real travesty to all of that, because he was provided everything, he had the training, he had the knowledge, he had the equipment, and I don't know how this ended, but the insurance company was trying not to pay out his life insurance for negligence. So I know I was going to court. This was some years ago. I don't remember what happened, but I had some guys on the crew that weren't listening, and I had to kind of throw that in their face that, you know, because one of them made a snide comment that my family would be better off if I died. Well, just because you have life insurance doesn't make them better off. So sometimes you got to get the old preacher fire and brimstone mentality. But, you know, any of these topics you can use. Radiation safety. Is it going to come up? I don't know. I mean, even if you're doing civil work and you're bored, you know, maybe somebody's coming out to do a density test. Do one on radiation safety. I mean, you can go a lot of different places with it. You know, repetitive stress injuries. You can do that too. You know, there's all sorts of things, but sure, I would say use Google Toolbox Talks, ideas. You can find a lot of free resources out there. They usually have somebody else's name and logo plastered all over them, but they can get you some ideas. And we are going to be working on it, try to get up a library of our first goal is about 20 to 25 in the next couple months, and then we're really going to try to keep adding them, because obviously some of them are way more specific to your site than just generic slip, strips, and falls. So, you know, diving, working over water, you know, anything like that. But anybody else have any other questions? And I hope I answered it all right for you, sir. I apologize. I know it's a
No, you're fine. Made a lot of sense. I really appreciate it.
happy to help. Happy to help. It's one of these things that we all struggle with because it gets boring doing the same thing over and over again. It really does. Oh yeah, I did one on lasers once. I remember that. The crane we were doing actually had laser guides to move this crane. It was way more high tech than this thing needed to be. But we did laser safety. So there's different grades of lasers. Certain lasers can be seen with the naked eye and have no impact. Some cannot. Yada yada yada. So I mean, literally pull any rabbit out of your hat to get them to listen and follow and whatever you can do. So if a guy's coming out with a laser pointer, measuring distances, hey, there's an excuse to do one outside of your normal everyday. So the other thing as safeties that we have to do I'm sorry, does anybody have any other questions before I jump to the next thing?
No.
Okay. So one thing that safeties need to do, and if you're a safety, you need to be thinking about this if you have safeties work for you, they need to be able to make decisions in the field on their own. This is a standard. This book is a standard. It is the minimum that we should be doing. And there's no way, shape, or form that this document or 1926 or 1910 or anything else anybody ever comes up with will ever cover everything you do on a job site. No way, no how. It's never going to cover it all. I mean, it just won't. So what do? We have to have somebody competent and capable of making calls. How do we keep people safe when it doesn't fall into one of these categories? Because here's the thing, that some safeties are scared to make a call because it could be their career. I get it. It could be your career. I lost a lot of nights sleep thinking about it. But people have to work. If the work can't progress, there's no point of you having a job as a safety. You don't have a job anymore because the work can't progress. Construction is inherently dangerous. There's risk everywhere. Somebody once told me my job was to make everybody as safe as possible. That's not true. If we were going to a construction site and we were all going to be safe as possible, guess what I'd do? Not let anybody on the construction site. I mean, that's as safe as possible you make them. That's not, we have to get the job done. So we have to work with our competent people and our qualified people to get the job done. So if you're doing something that has high hazards, make sure you're working with a good qualified person that'll pick up the phone, help you out. The worst thing you could do is an AHA and APP are living documents, meaning that as we find new hazards or personnel changes, those things need to be updated. The worst thing happen is you uncover something or find something on one day that's a hazard that stops you cold, and your qualified person can't get you an answer for a week or two. Not acceptable, right? So make sure you have that, because that's where people are fighting their schedule, fighting monies, and corners get cut. It's always good to have those relationships up front. Maybe you never need to do it, ever. Hopefully you don't. You never need to call that in. But, it's good to have there. So why am I saying that? That safety's got to be able to make those calls. A lot of people aren't comfortable with it. So we were talking about that this document's not going to cover everything and work has to progress, but we have to do it safely. It's easy to just follow the letter of the law and just say no, but sometimes there are legit ways to do things using your brain. So you want a good safety officer that will think through things, keep your folks safe, keep your companies protected, but also understands that the work has to move on. And sometimes you have to be creative. Some of the greatest things were built in construction by constraints. If we had unlimited resources and unlimited time, we wouldn't build anything. We just keep adding on. You know, it would never be finished, because why would you? You have no direction. You know, one of the towers they built, Sears Tower, you know, something like that, and I don't remember which one, forgive me, they weren't allowed to stop traffic. So they would roll flatbeds in with steel on them, and they pick it, and they would slow down to pretty slow, and they pick it right off of it. And the flatbed would go around the building, and another crane would be dropping trash or scrap or whatever on, and they would roll out. That's pretty cool. Now, we couldn't do it today, of course, but pretty cool. Constraints, time constraints, resource constraints make us get creative. And that's cool. We get to do a lot of cool things by those things. We get to use our brains, not do the same thing every day. You know, we're not just building the same spec home. We're doing interesting, awesome things. And your safety and quality people need to be able to keep up with that. They really do. And unfortunately, if they're saying, man, I don't think we can do it, we looked at all those angles. Just remember that they should be experts, so they're worth listening to. Okay. Anything else right now, folks? We're getting into our Q&A time. Anybody want to, go to the rapid fire round? Hit me up with some questions. All right. There's one more thing I want to talk about if we don't have any more questions. And I don't really remember if it's still in the new version of the N35, but I know it was in the old version. There was a checklist for equipment coming on site. And it's a good thing to do. And as a safety, I was expected to do this before I ever let them on site. And of course, I don't see it. Well, there used to be a checklist, and it's in here. I know it's in the written word, but there used to be a document. Unfortunately, I don't see it in this one. But what it went through was, before you let a piece of equipment on site, make sure the brakes work, make sure the lights work. That's the proper safety stickers. Not leaking oil all over the gosh darn place. Those sort of things, we used to do on cranes we rolled in, just do a quick turn. Make sure the limits work. Make sure any other safety devices are enabled and working appropriately. So those are one of the things that your safety should be handling. Making sure that stuff's not a piece of junk coming on your site, dumping oil everywhere, and somebody, God forbid, calls the EPA, and now we're in it, So this one went pretty quick, guys. We're 12 minutes out. I know it's just general safety, nothing extraordinary. We'll get into more specific topics as these webinars come on. Look for Fall Pro coming, confined space. We're partnering with a technology-based company doing training on Tuesdays. They have technology training and project management training. So they're offering some webinars as well. And it's a good opportunity to learn. We get to meet each other, build those relationships. So anybody have any final questions before we call today?
No.
None. We really appreciate it, though.
Hey, anytime. Glad you all came. Appreciate it. I actually have some chat boxes I haven't seen. Okay. Hey, you're welcome. I appreciate the comment. We're happy to help. We actually love this work. I honestly don't miss doing safety every day. I found it very stressful. But if you're doing it right, it probably is going to be stressful. But some people are very good at it. Keep it up. Make sure you keep reading and are up to date on the regs that change often. So we never stop learning, unfortunately. I hope you all have a great day and you'll have a great weekend. Before I let you go, if you have not entered your email and need CEU credits, you go up to the little dude up here, click on them, edit your name and email, enter it, and the admins will get you out a CEU certificate.
Hey,
So make sure you do
one
that.
quick thing. Pardon me.
Yeah.
I'm on the phone. I'm just calling in on the phone. Dial-in number. What actual app are you guys using to get into the meeting like this? Future references.
Go to meeting.
Oh, go to meeting. Go to meeting. That's what you said.
Yes, sir. And yes, sir. So if you actually click on the link and we can get you the CEU. Like I can see you talking, but I can't add your email. But my contact. So how do I'm trying to add it for you. I can edit your name. What's your name, sir?
Harold, Harold. Last name is Holton, Holton.
EON or DON?
T is in Tom.
Oh,
TON.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Cool. I just added you. I hope it picks up the right way there. All right. Well, for those that can't see my screen, my name, email, that's our office line. The admin will get you to us. I'm usually moving around and about, so I'm in a satellite office today. But she'll get you to me if you need anything. Feel free to hit me up. We're happy to join. Glad y'all are doing it. Really appreciate it. And thank you for the feedback. Hope y'all have a great weekend and the weather's nice where you're at.
All right.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great day, guys.